Hi everyone, welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 3 o'clock show. We have a good one in store for you. I'd like to welcome my first guest, Dr. Zam Sweshkenbaum. Thank you.
It's nice to meet you, Kate.
So much for coming in with the Rhode Island Department of Health, the director of the dental program there. Just got some really good numbers for national rankings, didn't we, about the state of oral health here in Rhode Island?
Right. So Oral Health America comes up with this biannual report, A State of Decay, and we rank number 7.
State of decay, so you don't want to have a big state of decay, but it's a top 10 ranking. How did Rhode Island manage to do so well in this ranking?
So they looked at 6 things. One was our severe tooth loss rate among older adults, which is decreased. For example, our edentulous rate, so that's your new word for the day, went from 25% of people over 65 in 1999. It's now at just 12%.
Wow, cut in half.
Yep. Utilization of dental services by older adults, the fact that we have a high rate of community water fluoridation, our state has a state oral health plan, and what else? The basic screening survey was done of older adults.
So what do you attribute that huge drop-off of those older individuals going from that 25% number down to that 12?
I think greater utilization of dental services, community water fluoridation, awareness of the importance of oral health, and hopefully, the big one is hopefully dietary changes.
Okay.
But again, the other thing I should say is with a reduced edentulous rate means there are more older adults who are keeping their teeth, so they need to be aware they have to get those teeth taken care of.
And how does, from the dietary standpoint, when you're talking with older individuals, did dietary factors play a role?
Well, one of the things we say is if you sip all day, you get tooth decay. So if you have sugar, it makes your mouth acidic. And there's a certain bacteria called Streptococcus mutans. Streptococcus mutans loves an acidic environment. It converts the sugars into more acid, which then demineralizes the teeth. So if you're going to have something sweet, which I have a lot of sweets, just have it maybe at one time during the day.
Okay, so keep an eye on that sugar intake. So this number 7 ranking, can we get higher? So what does the state continue to do to address oral health needs in the state?
I think, again, to make sure we have a robust adult Medicaid dental benefit so that older adults have access to care. I think communicating with older adults and increasing their oral health literacy, making them aware of the need to get preventive services. Because what happens is when people turn 65 and they lose their work-related dental benefit, they may stop going to the dentist. So we need to raise awareness that even if, ideally they'll have a dental benefit, but if they don't, if they can spend money on preventive services, it's better for their teeth.
Any concerns from a funding standpoint as to how things look for Medicaid and where these dental dollars may be or may not be?
I think in the future, I'd love to see sort of an integration of medical and dental, that the medical insurances realize that if they put more money into dental, that it'll save them money on the medical end.
It's not just auxiliary, it's complementary.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the whole medical dental integration things means educating physicians to ask each patient when they come in, have you been to the dentist? So I was very fortunate. I went to a physical recently and my physician did ask, have you been to the dentist? But not all physicians know to do that. So we need to educate the whole medical community that the mouth is actually part of the body, and if they make the referral, that'll help.
Again, that number 7 top 10 ranking, though, is good for the state of Rhode Island as to what we've been doing.
Yep.
And again, not that we need to get to that top mark, but what should folks be aware of when they're watching the show right now as to the role, again, that the Department of Health plays?
Well, again, I think our big role is to try to educate the public, assure that we have evidence-based preventive modalities in place, like the community water fluoridation. There are still communities out there that don't have fluoride that we can help. Again, raising older adults' awareness that as they age, they have more dental issues. Part of it having to do with medications and dry mouth. So I don't know if you know, but saliva is nature's magic potion for keeping your mouth healthy. And if you don't have enough saliva, you're at increased risk. So you may need to go more to the dentist. So I think the Department of Health needs to help raise awareness among older adults and also medical providers.
And you talk, again, the focus being on older Rhode Islanders. I mean, we do have the aging baby boomer population. What's your take on regular adults and children in dental health?
We are very fortunate. We have high insurance uptake for children because of our Right Smiles program. So 97% of kids have dental insurance. I'd like to see more of them going, so we need to, again, educate parents and physicians to refer. Sealants are a very important preventive measure, and if we can increase the number of kids that have sealants, also, if we can increase the number of kids who get fluoride varnish either at the dentist office or at their physician. So physicians can actually now apply a preventive fluoride. Ideally, we want to reduce the number of kids with early childhood caries or tooth decay.
So when did that happen that they started having physicians on the fluoride side of things?
2009. I actually had to fill that out. It's not like I normally know that. I had to fill out a questionnaire today. But yeah, in 2009, we helped physicians learn that while they're seeing a kid, because not every kid is immediately going to the dentist.
Yep.
So I'm talking about, well, I'll ask you, when do you think a kid should first go to the dentist?
When they've got teeth coming in.
Right, perfectly. So age 1. But we didn't always know that. We always, 3, 5. But age 1 is the recommended dental visit. And at that point, physicians, or if they've finally got a dental home, they can apply the fluoride varnish.
And again, because they have them right there, they've got the captive audience, if you will.
Exactly, yeah.
And let's just talk about the science altogether. It's 2018. Have we seen any advancement sort of in the dental arena that we see played out in the sort of either average doctor visit or more advanced measures?
Well, I think hopefully dentistry is moving from totally surgical, doing, drill and fill, to a more medical field. And again, using those fluorides. Well, first we need to do a proper risk assessment for each patient because everybody's different. And then, based on their risk assessment, give them the proper fluoridation that they need to actually reverse the decay. So I think that's probably the biggest advance.
Getting to knowing that exact level, because it sounds like it could have too much or too little.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's usually a concern unless somebody wants to swallow it excessively. But there's actually, so my mother, for example, went on an antihypertensive that dried her mouth out. So I knew that she was at increased risk of tooth decay. So I prescribed her a 5,000 parts per million toothpaste. Normal toothpaste is 1,000 parts per million. And the data actually shows that reduces her risk of root caries. But not every patient knows that. Not every patient has a son as a dentist, but we need to make sure that physicians are educating the patients. Or even, what if the pharmacies started educating patients? You just got a prescription for this. It's going to dry your mouth out. By the way, you need this.
So have that secondary, exactly.
So I think that medical-dental integration is also something that's fairly new.
Well, again, because sounds like we are in 7th place here with the most recent rankings for things that we've been doing here in the state. What do we expect to see from the Department of Health in the coming year?
Well, I think we're going to be, we just actually applied for some grants where we want to do things to improve access to care for vulnerable populations.
Okay.
So we have a new worker in the workforce called a public health dental hygienist. These are dental hygienists who can go to alternative sites such as nursing homes and provide preventive services. So they don't need to wait for the dentist to do an exam. They can go ahead and provide a cleaning. So that's something pretty exciting. So been working with CCRI on an educational program, and I guess, and possibly working on something called teledentistry, which would allow the public health dental hygienist to do an exam, send some pictures back to the dentist so that they can give some advice and treatment recommendations.
So incorporate a little technology into it as well.
Exactly.
Well, very good. I'm glad that we were able to get you in here, give folks sort of a state of the state, if you will, of Rhode Island dental health and where things are at. We'll provide a link to that study, that state of decay, that Rhode Island does rank 7th for oral health here. So appreciate, Doctor, you're taking the time to come in.
You bet. It was nice to meet you, Kate.
Okay, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next guest here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for this 3 o'clock show here this afternoon. It's a bright and sunny day in downtown Providence. I'd like to welcome my next guest in, Ava Agadello. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hope's Harvest, Rhode Island, which we'll get into shortly, part of a big group that there's going to be a special screening of a film tomorrow night at the cable car. This is The Gleaners and I. This is folks who glean food products, whether that's here in the city, in the forest. Tell us about The Gleaners and I and about this discussion that's going to take place about how folks really look at consumption and gleaning, if you will.
Sure. So The Gleaners and I is a film that was made by Agnes Varda. It's a French film, and it's about people who go out into farmers' fields and rescue surplus food. So when there's, after the harvest, the farmers used to leave, and this is a very ancient practice, used to leave food in the field for those who were poor or hungry to come and get that leftover food. And that's something that's still happening all over the world in that way, and then is happening in a little bit more structured ways now in our sort of modern world. And this is a film about that.
And have you seen the film?
I have seen the film, yeah.
I saw BBC, one of the top 100 films of the 21st century. I mean, that impactful.
It's absolutely, it's a beautiful movie. It's really well done. It's really interesting. I think it goes sort of beyond some of those more documentary style movies that you're used to seeing. And it really shows profiles of just fascinating people engaging in this gathering process.
And so let's talk a little bit about the gleaning process, if you will. You mentioned it being an ages-old practice, and I think there's something probably very just unifying about this film. It's food and consumption and how to help everybody on the planet. You know, let's talk a little bit about Hope's Harvest, Rhode Island, and how that plays into looking at consumption here. So let's talk a little bit about the organization that you helped found.
Sure. So I've been working on this project for about a year, and the goal is to mobilize volunteers to rescue that surplus food out of local farmers' fields and distribute it out to hunger relief agencies across the state. So my background is working with the Rhode Island Food Bank. I've also worked with farmers in my life. And there's a lot of food going to waste in Rhode Island's farms, and we want to make sure that that's nutritious, delicious, yummy, healthy food that's going to the people who need it the most.
And I'm assuming this is something that goes on throughout the country. You must have a network of folks, because it probably seems like it would be a logistical operation, if you will.
It sure is. There's a lot of different moving parts. I mean, it comes off as pretty straightforward, right? You go, you get the food. But
seems straightforward.
Sure, but there's all kinds of things to manage. There's getting the trucks and the cold storage and making sure the volunteers are trained and ready to go out into the field and have the right equipment, and getting the food from the right farm to the right pantry, making sure you have volunteers in the area that you need them to be. So it's all definitely got a lot going on, which is what keeps it interesting and fun.
So how big is this volunteer operation? I'm assuming you always need more volunteers.
Absolutely. You can sign up to volunteer at hopesharvest.org, and we're always trying to recruit more volunteers to participate. My goal was to recruit 200 volunteers this first year and have at least 100 of them get out actually onto the farm. So I think lots of people are really excited about it, and it seems like, you know, it's a fun 2 hours. You get to go be a farmer for a little while and get some sunshine and do something really tangible and helpful for your friends and neighbors.
Can you incorporate this as a family activity? You know, maybe do you have to be an adult over the age of 14, 16, 18?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we'll have different trips that will be geared towards different groups. Some of it is a liability question. We might be able to have parents sign waivers for their kids and stuff like that, but we want to make sure that the farmers are safe and that everybody's totally covered when they're going out. So I think that can get a little trickier with young kids, but we'd love to have, I mean, U-Pick is a really great fun thing to do with family, so it's similar to that for sure.
So you're going to be one of the panelists after the screening tomorrow night. Who else is taking part in this conversation?
Sue Anderbois, who's the Director of Food Strategy for the state of Rhode Island, will be there. Antonia Bryson, who spearheaded a campaign called Food Too Good to Waste, which was sort of consumer focused on food waste at the household level. And then Bridget Sweet from Johnson & Wales University, who's the Director of Food Safety there and is doing a lot of thinking about institutional food waste and how to rescue some of that food from colleges and universities.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, kind of multi-pronged approach, because you're in the fields, but as you said, homes, colleges, universities, What about stores? You know, you see these mass supermarkets. How it might not be your jurisdiction per se, but you know that it's there. How is that approached?
So I think that, I used to work at the food bank, and they get a lot of great product from our local supermarkets. So I know that people are trying to work on that, and they have their own set of challenges for sure. But there is definitely waste. One of the things that's a bit of a challenge is that grocery stores have gotten more and more efficient over the years, so they don't always have as much to let go of, which is good for them as a business and not great for the people who could use that food.
So the screening tomorrow night will provide all the information. Is it sold out yet?
It is not sold out yet. You can still get tickets. You can go to our Facebook page for the Eventbrite link, which is Hope's Harvest on Facebook, and you can also go to the Cable Cars website, which is cablecarcinema.com, and they have the link as well to purchase tickets. So definitely go get some.
Yes, and that's the waning weeks of the cable car, and it's again one of what BBC called one of the top 100 films of the 21st century. I'm sure you've been gearing up for this tomorrow night, but as you said, you're always there rolling up your sleeves looking for people to help you out. I mean, what does the summertime have in store? Is it just that week in, week out, just synchronizing and getting folks where they need to be?
Yeah, we're hoping to start really doing lots of gleaning trips in July, and that's when farmers start to have product in the field that they just, there's so much abundance. So things like, squashes and tomatoes and peppers and all that stuff that you think of as fresh and beautiful out in the field will start to come in pretty heavy, and we'll be able to get out as much as we can.
How much, when you bring these to places, pantries and the food bank, of their supply, how much do you think this contributes?
I think it contributes a lot, because when you think about what you're actually getting for fruits and vegetables, the bang for your buck is much higher, right? Fruits and vegetables are super, super necessary for a healthy diet and for avoiding some of those health and diet-related diseases. And so I think for people who are low income, maybe they have more access to canned goods or dry goods, but when you get some really fresh local fruits and veggies, it just is so much better. And the quality of that produce, because it just came off the farm, it lasts a lot longer. So if you're low income, that really makes a big difference, because you don't want something in your fridge that's just going to go bad within a day or two.
And so talk a little bit about the movie, The Gleaners and I. Where did they take a look at gleaners? Is it worldwide? Where are they focused in this?
It's mostly in France. And it's it was about 20 years ago that the movie was made. Apparently there's been a follow-up since then. But it's farms and also people who are gleaning from the markets. So, in France they have farmers markets everywhere, kind of all of the time, and there'll be people going and sort of picking up what's left over after the market, so that's a big part of it. But it's also a little bit broader than that and goes into people who glean things for making art. So people who are making art out of like trash and
that's what I'd seen in the preview. The bigger gleaning sort of community, if you will.
Yeah, and then like if you want to get really woo-woo about it, and metaphorically speaking, the filmmaker herself is also a gleaner, and she's sort of pulling these images and stories from people that she's encountering. So I just found it really moving. It was a really pretty film. Yeah.
Do you think it really opens people's eyes too about consumption and maybe conspicuous consumption, if you will, and sort of just needing what's needed and having a sense of what overabundance and what waste might mean?
Yeah, and I think the fact that the practice of gleaning goes back so far, that there's a history of generosity among people who knew that there were people who were in need and wanted to make sure that that product wasn't going to waste. And farmers are really deeply committed to feeding people, and so it makes a lot of sense that they would want to make sure that nothing's going to waste. Also, they worked really hard to grow that food in the first place.
Somebody please take these tomatoes.
Totally, and they're beautiful. It's beautiful food, and of course they want to see it getting used. So, yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a great filming, a great screening discussion after. And of course, if you want to find out more information, we'll have links to Hope's Harvest, Rhode Island, as well as the film screening tomorrow night. Ava, I appreciate your taking the time to come into the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back with our next guest here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. I'd like to welcome in Rhode Island historian Dr. Patrick Conley. Thank you for joining us here in studio.
Great to be here.
We have the pleasure of often publishing a lot of your works on GoLocalProv.com, but wanted you in because it's kind of a big week here in Rhode Island. May 29th, Rhode Island's Statehood Day. Became
Correct.
the 13th and last of the original colonies to ratify the Constitution. And the Heritage Harbor Foundation is making a big celebration of this.
Yes, we hope to make it an annual event. The Heritage Harbor Foundation is a $4 million foundation that where the money was salvaged from the Heritage Harbor Museum, that a project that failed, but we were able to transfer a lot of the assets of the museum to the developers of the Rhode Island School of Nursing, and we're using that money for heritage-oriented projects, and one of those projects will be the recognition of Rhode Island's ratification of the Constitution. That's Statehood Day. It's May 29th, and really that ratification brought the Union together and ended the Revolutionary era, not only for the state, but for the country.
And you talked about, again, the book ending of Rhode Island's role in this, from both the burning of the Gaspee to being that bookend of that 13th state. I mean, kind of Rhode Island was there at the, quote, beginning, and then was that final check in the box there.
Yes, I did an essay once called First in War, Last in Peace, and that kind of describes the situation. The burning of the Gaspee in June of 1772 was the first major overt military act leading up to the outbreak of the War for Independence. And Rhode Island's ratification of the Constitution as the 13th state brought an end to the Revolutionary era. So it's very appropriate that we have this celebration of Statehood Day in conjunction with the Patuxent Rangers and also the Gaspee Days Committee, because as you mentioned appropriately, that those events bookend one another, and I'd like to embed Statehood Day into the Gaspee Day celebration.
Fantastic. Again, so this big first celebration, what are we expecting on the 29th?
Well, there's not bells and whistles, but there will be, you might say, a more cerebral approach. Dr. John Concatta, past president of Gaspee Days, will talk about the Gaspee incident kicking off this bookended celebration. And then Colonel Ron Bonds, who's the commander of the Patuxent Rangers, will talk about the Rangers. They got revived in during the bicentennial when I was chairman of RI 76 back in the mid-70s, and they've been very active ever since. He'll talk about the Rangers and some of the military highlights of the Revolution, and then I'll wind it up with brief remarks on Rhode Island's ratification and the reason why we delayed ratification. The whole thing will take about an hour, and we've got flags and copies of the U.S. Constitution and also a free booklet on Rhode Island and the Constitution that'll be distributed to attendees, and then there'll be refreshments served as well.
Okay, sounds like it's going to be a fun celebration. We'll provide all the links to that. You expect some history buffs to turn out?
I hope so. Where this is the inaugural, maybe when this becomes a hallowed and traditional event, there'll be more people, but I certainly think that we'll have anywhere from 100 to 200 people at the initial ceremony, particularly with GoLocal and individuals like yourself helping to promote it.
Getting the word out. And speaking of promotion, if you're not celebrating Rhode Island Statehood Day, you're usually found writing. What's the next book on tap from Dr. Conley?
Well, I'm the president also of the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame, and I've done two books on our earlier inductees. One is called Rhode Island's Founders, that covers from settlement to statehood to 1790. The next volume was called Makers of Modern Rhode Island, and it covered from 1790 to 1860. I have a book that's right in press now that is called Rhode Island's Golden Age and Those Who Gave It Glitter, and it covers the period from 1861 to 1900. And right in the middle of that period, the reason why I called it the Golden Age, The federal census of 1880 showed that Rhode Island led the entire nation in the assessed valuation of its real and personal property. We were number one.
We were number one, wow.
Yeah, I think we've gone very sharply in the other direction, unfortunately. So hopefully we can at least celebrate our golden age. Let's put it this way, we used to be a contender.
So what was that period of time, 1860 to 1900?
1861 to 1900.
So how many more books are in tap after this?
Well, I've done 30, and I'm 80 years old in the bloom of my senility, so I don't know how many more I have in the well.
Well, a great celebration on May 29th. Again, the celebration of Rhode Island's Statehood Day. We'll provide more links and some information from that as well. But wanted you to come in and give folks a little preview. Again, this is Rhode Island's role in bookending, which is first into war, last in peace.
Well, first, that's right. And we were leaders in that revolutionary movement along with Virginia and Massachusetts. And at the end point, we were like recalcitrant, but for good reasons. The Constitution countenanced slavery. The Quakers, who were abolitionists, were very influential by the late 1780s and denounced the Constitution for that purpose. We were pioneers in what we might call democratic localism. We elected our own governor, all the members of our General Assembly. So we were very suspicious of removing government too far from the people, putting it in a national capital, giving it to a national government that might invade states' rights. We were also very, very much concerned about other matters. We like, for example, the method of ratifying should have been by a popular vote, a popular referendum. The Founding Fathers said, we'll do it by ratifying convention. Well, now everywhere where a constitution is implemented or changed, there's a popular referendum. So Rhode Island, in a way, you might say, got its. They came around to us. So in some respects, not why the question would be not why it took Rhode Island so long to join the Union, but why it took the Union so long to come around to Rhode Island's position.
Fantastic. Well, you can hear more about this and more on May 29th. Dr. Conley, I appreciate your taking the time to come in to talk today.
My pleasure, Kate.
Don't go anywhere. 4 o'clock will be Business Monday with GoLocal CEO Josh Fenton. Appreciate your tuning in for the 3 o'clock show here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.
Good. Very good.